My body count's probably higher than everyone else's combined. Look, I didn't do anything wrong. Just made a joke at dinner. I said my body count was higher than everyone's combined. Just teasing, just trying to lighten the mood. Everyone laughed nervously except him. He didn't say a word, just stood up and left. The next morning, there was a note on the counter and a letter from his lawyer in the mailbox. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. It was supposed to be funny. We were out with friends at Hearth Oak, the table full of drinks and laughter. When I said it, I joked that my body count was probably higher than everyone else's combined. People laughed, but not really. The kind of nervous laugh that dies fast. Callum didn't laugh at all. He just looked at me, his face unreadable, then quietly put down his fork. I said he needed to relax, that it was just a joke, but he didn't answer. The silence made me talk more, teasing that men were so sensitive these days. He still said nothing. When the check came, he stood, left some bills on the table, and walked out. Everyone stared at me. I rolled my eyes and said he couldn't handle a confident woman. At home, he didn't yell or ask questions. He packed a small bag and said he'd stay at his mother's for a few days. I told him he was being dramatic. He said, "You think it's a joke because it's never you being laughed at." Then he left. The next morning, his coffee mug was gone and his wedding ring sat on the counter. I laughed when I saw it, but my hand shook when I tried to pick it up. The house felt wrong without him. Too neat, too still. I told myself he was sulking, that he'd come back once he cooled off. At work, I told my coworkers the story like it was a comedy. Some laughed politely. One said her husband would have left too. I brushed it off, said men today couldn't handle honesty. Deep down, I felt something twisting, but I ignored it. When I called that night, he didn't answer. Instead, his mother, Ellen, texted me, asking to stop contacting him until he was ready. That message made me furious. I called my own mother, Ruth, who said I shouldn't apologize for having a sense of humor. She said he'd crawl back once he realized how ridiculous he sounded. A few days later, I went to our house to grab paperwork. His office door was half open. On his desk, I saw an email chain printed neatly. His name beside Grant and Foster LLP. My stomach turned. I told myself it couldn't be what it looked like. Still, I took a photo of it. That night, I messaged him saying we needed to talk. His reply came hours later. There's nothing left to discuss. I stared at those words until the screen dimmed, realizing maybe he'd been serious when he walked out. A week later, a friend invited us both to her birthday dinner. I said I'd go, certain Callum wouldn't dare make a scene. When he showed up, calm, polite, perfectly put together, I felt a spark of triumph. I wanted to remind him what he'd lost. So, when the conversation turned playful, I joked again that I'd had more experience than anyone here. The table went quiet. Someone coughed. Callum just looked at me steady, then said softly, "That explains a lot." I tried to laugh it off, but no one joined in. I said he was trying to embarrass me. He said, "You do that well enough on your own." My throat went dry. He stood up, reached into his jacket, and set an envelope beside my plate. "You like being the center of attention," he said. "Here's something worth talking about." Then he left. When I opened it, my fingers trembled. Inside would draft divorce papers. The date printed on them was 2 weeks before that first dinner, the night of the joke. He'd already planned this. Everyone at the table pretended not to look at me. I smiled stiffly, said he'd calm down. But as I drove home later, the laughter I forced out sounded nothing like mine. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the papers. He had them ready before I even said the joke, like he'd been waiting for a reason. I told myself he wouldn't actually go through with it, that he'd cool off once he saw me trying. I texted him long messages about love, honesty, and misunderstanding. He never replied. One afternoon, I went to the house to pack some things. His study was locked, but I knew where he kept the spare key. Inside, everything was arranged too neatly. Folders lined up, labeled in his clean handwriting. Finances, messages, custody. I opened one and froze. Screenshots of my posts, texts, comments from friends about me living wild before marriage. Another folder had receipts and bank transfers marked misuse of shared funds. Every page felt like a quiet accusation. I sat in his chair and whispered that he'd gone too far. But the more I flipped through, the more I realized he hadn't rushed this. He'd been documenting, building a case brick by brick. When he came home later, I confronted him. He said I should lock up when I was done. I asked if he was really doing this. He said, "You already did." Then he went upstairs, calm as if nothing had broken at all. The mediation took place 2 weeks later. I wore a navy dress, simple and serious, hoping to look composed. When I walked into the office, Callum was already seated with his lawyer. He looked rested, almost peaceful. I smiled politely, expecting him to glance at me, but he didn't. The mediator asked if I wanted to speak first, and I said yes. I told them the whole situation had been exaggerated, that it was only a joke gone wrong. I said Callum had turned humor into a crime. His lawyer opened a folder. Inside were pages, screenshots, bank statements, even printed messages between me and Blake from years ago. My stomach dropped. I said those didn't mean anything. The lawyer said they showed a pattern of public disrespect. Callum stayed silent the entire time. When the mediator asked if he had anything to add, he said softly, "I'm just here for closure." I tried to regain control, told the mediator that men couldn't handle confident women, that I'd never cheated. He replied, "No one said you did." Somehow that hurt worse. When the mediator read the summary, it was clear: property and custody awarded to Callum. Immediate separation. I felt my throat tighten. I looked at him, hoping he'd show mercy, but he simply nodded and thanked the mediator. Then he turned to me and said, "You wanted everyone to laugh. Now they have their ending." He left without waiting for mine. The house felt hollow when I came back. His things were gone, drawers empty, closets half open. Even the smell of him, clean soap and cedar, was fading. On the kitchen table sat a thick envelope with my name on it. Inside were the final papers stamped and dated. I had expected anger or a note, something personal. There was nothing, just a quiet end written in black ink. I called my mother. She said she was sorry, but that maybe I'd gone too far this time. I told her I was just being honest, that humor shouldn't ruin a marriage. She said it wasn't humor. It was cruelty dressed as confidence. I hung up before she could say more. For a while, I just walked through the house touching everything he'd left behind. The chipped mug, a single sock, our son's old drawing pinned to the fridge. The silence hurt worse than shouting ever could. I whispered, it was just a joke. Like saying it again could make it true. But the room didn't answer. That night, I sat in his old chair, staring at the space where his computer had been. I thought about how calm he'd been, how quiet. He never tried to destroy me. He just watched me do it myself, piece by piece. I laughed once, but it came out shaky. I told myself he'd regret it someday, that he'd miss me. But deep down, I knew the truth. He'd already moved on from the sound of my voice long before he